Good morning, everybody. Live and the 1st of October. Yes, the rain has come just in time for the month of rain. You know, never before that. It's kind of a rule now. And I love the way it's started on time. I love when anything starts on time. I tried to start us on time this morning, but we were waiting for Leigh-Ann Moles. So she'll be with us in a minute. So far this morning, Mbulelo, who's always on time, I got to give him that. Always, goes always on time.
Oh,
without
hey.
call. Right?
Yeah. But then he went and lied to people about a party on an island, so I'm not sure if we have to cancel him.
For the right place. There we go.
Yeah. I think it was Jerry.
Hang on a second. Why are you? Now this is bizarre. I'm just hearing. I've got the music on here, and I could hear that through the system, but I couldn't hear you. Talk to me.
Gareth, what are your deepest concerns?
No, hang on. You're coming through the speaker. This is so bizarre. This is like aliens have invaded. Hang on a second. Let me just... How bizarre. How bizarre. Yeah, hang on.
Maybe we do the whole show just as songs.
There we go.
So, you know.
There we go. Now you're on. Hello, Mbulelo. How's it? So I was saying, great. Mbulelo's always on time.
Yeah.
And there's Ben Karpinski.
Hey, guys.
Hey, what's happening?
Sorry, I had some technical issues, but I'm back. And I'm happy to be here.
I absolutely cannot get enough of October, and it's only like a couple of hours in. I don't know why. I get giddy like a kid about this month. It's my favorite month of the year. Everything's just perfect. And you feel that pull towards the end of the year. It's just the best. Have you started making any plans, either of you, for the end of the year?
I'm going to go to Cape Town, definitely, from like the 20th, I think, because my parents have just moved house. So there's like a new family home for Christmas. It's pretty exciting. But what I want to do is go do the road trip, because there's a big incentive for me. Gary plays Stud Farm in the Karoo, just outside of Colesberg. It's now been turned into this really cool guest house thing. So you can actually go and relive the whole player family experience. You can go hit the balls off the top of the hill. You can walk where he walked, and no doubt spoke greatness to horses. I'm not sure if they serve bacon at breakfast, but even if they do, out of respect, I will decline it.
Will they give you things for free and not make you pay for anything like his children?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll have to reread I didn't read that far down the website. I was sold on the pictures alone. Yeah, so I want to do stuff like that. Even if it's just probably me by myself. I'll just get a cat sitter, and then head on down road tripping.
That sounds awesome. You know, there's something really cool about traveling on your own. Like I did this very short trip to Cape Town the other day, but I was in the airport on my own. There's something nice about it. You kind of observe other people, or you read a book, or you walk around, you look at what's going on, you kind of take stuff in, and you have time to think and process things. When you're traveling with somebody, you're always talking about the practical shit, like, oh, what time is the boarding gate and all of that stuff. So you don't spend a lot of time observing or thinking. Or I like traveling on my own. I don't like it all the time. It's nice to share things with people, but sometimes it's kind of nice.
Yeah, but it's also having time is so great for those little things, because you can go on any sort of tangent you want. It's great.
Yeah.
So Basitsana says in her best Kugel Joburg voice, "How divine is this rain, Oaks? Good morrow."
It's thick out there. I'm looking across it, like there's just this wall of trees now, because obviously a month ago it was just a wall of actual tree with no leaves, but now there's just leaves and it's just green. It's beautiful.
That's fantastic. It is so good. Venetia says there's October is die mooiste maand. Now there's actually a poem by C. Louis Leipold, which I remember learning in Afrikaans at high school, and it's called October. And it's the mooiste maand, and it talks about it's kind of like it's the Afrikaans equivalent, and I don't think I'm being unkind to either here, of Keats's season of mellow mists and fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, his To Autumn, which is obviously a different time of year. This is good literature. So Venetia, thank you. You've reminded me of a very good poem. And if you want to speak proper Afrikaans, then read that kind of literature, and you'll have an appreciation for it, which is just transcendent. Not this bullshit that you hear on Sokjol Treffers number 17. Where it's like, ek hou van jou tiete, Hulle is vir my mooi, that kind of shit.
Oh, I mean, let's not dismiss that as well. Like, I don't want ladies to stop thinking that we must stop creating an environment where a song like that can be made. I do think it is good that ladies have the titas that we can find mooi as well. Let's also not dismiss that.
Well, Nico asks Ben here. Ben, what do you think of Gary? I think he's a bit of a dous. What a question to ask Ben. You obviously haven't listened to the show before, because that's essentially what's I mean, Jesus. What
everyone calm down. Calm down. Look, Nico, everyone thinks Gary's a dous because the only thing they know of Gary is him basically in the press saying things about himself. Gary is a delightful man who's given a whole bunch to South Africa. He's actually one of the greatest South Africans of all time, and that's not just my words, it's his words too. And everything that he's done, if you look back from early days growing up poor to obviously becoming the greatest golfer in the world that had to travel 17 times a day, you can't fault the guy. I think he's been through every generation of this country in living history. And when he dies, I think in about 40 years' time, we will look back on this day and you'll have great regret in saying something so flippantly about one of the country's greatest ever sons.
Really, Nico,
obviously I could go a bit further into this, but I think if you were to do your reading, do your research, the guy's left an indelible mark on our lives. He's going to embrace it. Yeah.
He was also on Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is awesome.
Was he?
Oh. Yeah. With the green jacket. There's a green jacket episode.
God. I didn't see that episode. I love that. Okay, so look, here's Leigh-Ann Mole. She's hi. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, had connection issues, and I think it might have something to do with the storm.
Yeah, and you like to make an entrance. That's just who you're becoming now. Let's just be honest.
I've got a video I want to show you guys before we carry on with the show. So this is a Karen, and she basically she stops her car because these two guys are following her, which would be a reason to stop your car and call the police or whatever. But she gets out and starts berating them. Turns out they have a really good reason. They were trying to get her attention and warn her about something, but she's so busy Karening out that she misses the whole point. Just watch this quickly. It's hilarious. Take it up.
Leave me alone. Why do you keep following me? It's honestly so creepy, and I'm going to call the cops. Okay?
Man, no.
Because you guys aren't leaving me alone, and that's why women can't go out in the world by themselves, because of guys like you. What? Okay? So stop following me.
You have? I don't know if you have like a gas... You have a thing hanging out of your car.
What are you talking about?
There's literally a gas hose hanging out of your car. No one's being creeped. Oh. No, thank you, I guess. There's the thank you. That's... she's what? She's taking it with her? She doesn't have. Make sure to get all of it. Wow, dude.
Basically, the woman stupid. So what she's done is she drove off from the petrol station with the nozzle in the car, and she ripped it off the petrol pump, right?
Yeah.
And she's got this thing hanging out of her car, and these two guys are trying to help her. But she comes over to him and she's like, "This is typical. This is why women can't be safe in this world, because of men like you. Why are you guys being so creepy and following me?" Turns out they're trying to help her because she's got the fucking gas hose attached to her car. The dumbass. And you know what?
Dumbass.
This is kind of where chivalry dies, because I promise you those guys are not going to help anyone the next time. And that woman needed help. And I'm not just talking about for her mental health. She needed help. There are a lot of people who are not going to help people anymore because they're sick of being called things out of context where they've done nothing to deserve anyone's ire, just because the social language and the culture around all of this stuff goes down a certain path. This is exactly where chivalry dies. And I thought when I saw this, I was like, one of our listeners sent it to me on Instagram. I was like, this is typical.
I can totally get the first part, because some guys are creepy and some women are preyed upon. But as soon as you realize you're wrong, then be a human. Go back and say hi to the guys. Exchange numbers. Maybe go for drinks. Who knows? We could go somewhere. Don't just get in your car like a dumbass and just try to bundle the hose in and then go storm off in a heap. Then
She was probably
humiliated.
just, at that point, she was just humiliated.
Well, you must swallow your pride and be a better person, Leigh-Ann. That's what I always say.
No, I agree.
Although the classic bubble that got burst there is, oh, damn it. Maybe I'm not as hot as I think. You know, she was kind of, there was a part of her that was like, I hope they're following me a little bit. I hope it's for that. Like they're
I'm not important.
You're not that hot.
That's great. That is such a good point. Hey, Jim says there is a new Curb Your Enthusiasm season that's being released this month. I saw the promo. Not a promo. I saw the like the ad where they've got Larry's head, and it says the world has changed, and it's got Larry's big bald head, and then it says, but he hasn't.
You see him at the US Open when people are clapping and he's it's like center court, right? Arthur Ashe.
Yeah.
And he's closing his ears and everyone else is clapping. I don't like. It was a classic.
He's
video.
the biggest sports fan. He goes to basketball and he goes to American football matches and he goes to the golf.
No, baseball's his thing. Yankees guy, right? And
baseball.
So he sits with the Steinbrenners.
That's right. But he's I mean he wrote the Steinbrenners into the Seinfeld script. In fact, I think he played some minor role in the Seinfeld show as one of the Steinbrenners people or whatever. So he's a big sports fan, but he can't stand when people pay attention to him instead of to the sport when he goes to watch. He's like, look, he points, he goes, "What? Watch the sport. What are you watching me for? What are you doing?" He gets so annoyed. I love the guy. He's so human. He's a nutcase. All right, so we got to Friday in one piece. It's the brand new month of October. We got quite a lot to get into this morning. We've got the guy who invented Sexpo is going to join us later on. He's an Australian.
Of course, he's an Australian.
So
he's a priest Australian.
There's a guy called Mr Sexpo, David Ross. He's written a tell-all autobiography about life inside the adult entertainment bubble.
And not to be confused with the guy who painted your portrait, Gareth, with his penis.
No, that's Picasso. That thing, Jesus, you just made me think. I believe it's in our storeroom at Cliff Central.
It is. I remember when I left Cliff Central, I looked in the storeroom and there it was. That's a disrespect.
Mbulelo should try and dig it out.
I should look after that. I should actually hold on to it because it may be a very funny thing. You know, when I'm 70 years old one day and my kids say,
of course it will be,
grandkids or whoever, and they go, "Who's that in that picture?" I go, "It's me." But it was painted with a guy's cock. Can you imagine how your kid? Imagine how the grandkids will laugh and
it's a very flattering pic.
Yeah,
it's a flattering pic. I think you look pretty good in it.
I think so. So I think I'm gonna dig it out and keep it. I'm not gonna let it go to waste and get eaten by rats in our storeroom, because you know that storeroom, people don't go in there much, right? Mbulelo, when last were you in there?
No, I mean, like you said, once I went in there and I heard the rats copulating, I had to leave. So I haven't been back.
By the way, Mbulelo is doing something fun next week, and I'd like to hear Leigh-Ann and Ben's thoughts on this.
That's amazing, because he never does anything fun.
He's going to the Otter Trail, and he's actually like the MC host. He's got experience in that world. What do you think of that, Leigh-Ann?
Are there otters on the trail?
Yeah, Gareth, you were only going to get that answer from her.
Well, why not, Leigh-Ann? Why not?
Great answer. Do you know what it is?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It's something that I won't ever do in my life.
Yeah, there are two things. So Mbulelo taught me something. I didn't know there were two different things. There's a hike, which is like 5 days, and then there's the race, which is a whole lot more pressure. And what you do? What have you done before? You've done the race, right, or the hike? Which one is yours?
Oh no! I've run it with somebody who used to look after the trail. So I haven't done that race, but the guys who do it in, like, the top guys do it in 4 hours, just under 4 hours, and then the back end of that will be about 7 hours. So
isn't there
most people 5 days.
There's some kind of place at the end where they hang up their shoes, and there's like all these disgusting like shoes of people who've run that race, right? And they decorate this bar or something.
No, that's you thinking of Death Valley, and so that's more of an American thing. So no,
there's a place at the Otter Trail. Someone sent me pictures of it, and I'm sure I've been there at some point, where like all the people who've run it, if you've done it and you qualify, because they can't have everybody, they actually tie their shoes to the roof or something. I'm sure there's a story.
If I'm being honest, that's probably more Sally and them that hike it. So on the running trail is the whole thing about trail running is you don't leave, or the only thing you leave behind is your footprints. And that part of the world, they are not playing around. You don't come there with your Joburg attitude and sorry about the litter. You litter, you're banned from the race kind of thing. So no, there's no leaving.
Gareth, I wouldn't question Mbulelo on this. He's like the Elana Afrika of trail running. He's there. He shows up. Do not question the man. This is his wheelhouse.
No, but it's more like the Ben Karpinski, you know.
Are you? You don't have to run it.
Are you a big celebrity over there, Mbulelo? I mean, people know who you are, and like,
like in that trail running world, in the running world, I've been doing my thing there for 5 years, kind of operating as the MC. So people know who I am. Plus, I'm legit because I can actually run.
He's been called the Black Arnold Geertz, Gareth.
Well, I did actually replace Arnold Geertz. That's not a joke. I really did. At one
Arnold
of the major events,
Arnold Geertz is a friend of mine on Facebook, and he sometimes likes. Yeah, he sometimes likes my stuff, and then I get a bit of a thrill out of it. I won't lie. I mean, he's kind of an important dude. He certainly was.
Great hair, still.
Yeah.
Good
Speaking
dude.
of, so we mentioned Gary, we've mentioned Arnold Geertz, we've brought up a bunch of legends this morning. It's really good. This is a good start to my weekend.
Oh, we've got so much to be proud of. You know, obviously last month was Heritage Month, and I don't think enough was made about these names. So it's good that we're doing it now in October as well.
Yeah. I remember Ben and I were particularly nostalgic about a newsreader from the 1980s.
Well, the original alpha male, Adrian
Steed. Adrian Steed. And I remember I found out that his daughter was like in marketing or something, and she sent me an email, and I was like, wow, this is Adrian Steed's daughter. And I felt like I'd met, like this would be equivalent to kind of meeting the president of the United States. Because in South Africa in the 1980s, we didn't really have stars. There were people like Adrian Steed on TV, and my God, was he incredible. He was like our version of Walter Cronkite, Do you remember him, Leigh-Ann?
No. I know the name.
Do not lie. It was your first crush. Everyone loved Adrian Steed. Adrian Steed was like Ron Burgundy with like a V8 engine coming out of his chest. He was amazing.
No,
he was
Ben,
the voice
not everyone's
of everything.
old. Not everyone's old.
Mbulelo, that's like going to New York and saying, I don't like the all these buildings. They're old. The greatness is greatness. Stop being such a heathen. Adrian Steed was incredible. He literally was the voice of everything. He used to do Springbok Radio. He was
very powerful,
dashingly handsome.
Yes.
He was a tall, statuesque man, and everything he did was amazing. So I don't know what else I can say, Mbulelo. I mean, you want to find a hole in that? Can you imagine doing everything amazingly?
I had not got a grootboom, but fair enough. I hear you. I hear you.
It's a long time later. Here, look. Here's Adrian Steed doing his thing. Look at that.
I mean, look at him. Look at him. He's like, Kepler Vessels in his greatest days of the crease couldn't even look that steely.
Now, let me just remind you.
I'm like clearly not that old.
No, Leigh-Ann, get it together.
In the 80s, to wear various shades of brown and gray at the SABC, this was the height of fashion.
And he had no age. Look at him there. He could be anything between 18 and 74. He was just amazing. And when he told you about the Avia beer, you knew about it. So
Shut yourself. Yeah.
Is he Adrian or Adrian?
Adrian Steed.
Oh, no. He was everything because he appealed to everyone.
Look at this. Tracy's just recited a list like I was reciting Keats's poetry earlier of great names. Trevor Quirk, Adrian Steed, Gerald de Kock, Hugh Bladen. We've had some great Hugh Bladen. Oh, yes.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of tiers of hierarchy there, but I appreciate your efforts. Adrian Steed was the best, okay? He was everything. He was everything, and the rest were merely just getting jobs after that.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. There's a little nostalgia to tickle you on a Friday morning. Isn't that nice? That's so nice.
It always makes me think like it's such a shame certain greats of whatever they were great in were before the sort of online world, because we have no sort of like evidence of them. But then that also builds their legend, which is almost like works in their favor. Because if you don't know Adrian Steed, well, you missed out. But like, imagine you go onto YouTube right now and you find him doing like a soap advert, then you'll be like, he's not so great.
Well, that's the problem with everything. Everything before the internet era is kind of in a memory hole. And unless you actually have your own memories of those things, there isn't evidence to back you up. Like there might be in the SABC archives, but I defy you to go in there. You talk about rats copulating in our storeroom. Holy shit. I'm sure that everything in the SABC archives has been completely demolished.
But wasn't all sold?
They've probably taped over everything with bullshit like from now. Yeah, go ahead, Leigh-Ann. You had an interview?
I had a preliminary interview yesterday with a news network to be their sub-editor.
Oh, yeah?
And when they said, you know, what experience do you have? And I start with my 16 years at the SABC. And I could actually hear like the pain in her response. She wanted to say, "I'm so sorry." That's what her voice was saying.
Oh, Jesus.
And by the way, they don't keep archives. What a mess they are. Like, because we're doing a documentary on the history of South African football. Oh my God.
And they don't have anything, right?
And we're working with like Canadian partners, and they couldn't believe what they were hearing as an answer to where are your archives, how much does it cost?
If they do
when
have
I joined there in 1998,
yeah.
When I joined in 1998, there was an archive room. It was like and it had steel bars on the front, and it was like in the TV shows where you see the cops going into inventory.
Yes, yeah.
And there was a woman who archived everything.
The problem is that woman is still in there, but she's been dead for 5 years, and they can't find the key. And knowing the SABC, 3/4 of it has been burnt for fuel in the boiler room. I mean, it's just
her
incredible.
and the lady that tells the time. They're in the same predicament.
The woman who tells the time is in that same room. You know that when you hear the signal, it will be 6:26 and 14 seconds. Beep. That woman.
Wanneer jy die sein hoor.
I used to call that number just to check that every phone that I ever had worked. Even when I got a cell phone, I would like, I've got to call that number. Otherwise, how do I know my phone really works?
Does that still exist?
Yeah, well, I think so.
I don't know.
Let me see if I can call it now.
I don't even have a phone book.
Let me see. 1026. Let's just see.
I used to use
still making phone
all
books?
of the clocks in the house.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my balance is insufficient. That's embarrassing.
Oh.
It's the first, Gareth.
I'm the first.
Poverty.
I mean, what have I been? Poverty. So here are a couple of names that you may remember. Dorianne Berry.
Oh, yes.
Yes, of course.
Attractive woman.
Saucy woman, that, huh? It's quite something. And here's Michael De Morgan is another great name. He was proper. Jesus. Wonder if I can find a picture of him for you. Michael De Morgan. He was
6 hours, 28
there we go.
minutes and 0 seconds.
That's so great.
She
That is so
signs.
great.
Wanneer u die sein hoor, is dit
Oh, yeah.
6 uur 28
Yes.
minute.
She sounds as strident as ever, huh?
So we're still doing English and Afrikaans.
Only English and Afrikaans because, nobody post 94 calls that number anymore. So
No, this is why black people are always late.
You've cracked the code. Mbulelo, that's exactly what it is. Oh my God.
If you just got Nokolo to do the voice.
If the whites had just shared this number.
There are a whole lot of black people dialing 1026 going, I don't understand.
Sorry, I'm late, bro. It's just that my mom couldn't understand what time we should be at.
Look at this guy. Look at this work of art. This is Michael De Morgan. He was the newsreader when I was in nappies. This guy.
See, I remember these people very well.
He used to have a voice like this. Good evening. This is the news.
How do you remember that show, Pony, but not Adrian Steed? Jesus.
I don't know why.
So cool. Do you remember? Do you remember that woman who was on Mnet the first time when Mnet had just launched? What was her name?
A family friend of ours was one of those women, Jenny
Really?
Baron. Yeah, she was a continuity
You're
announcer.
making it up. Stop trying to climb on other people's coattails.
I promise you.
You know who was there
Wasn't
all
it-
the time? Of course, was Leigh-Ann Kruiwagen. I mean, he's been there since the dawn
Oh
of time.
yes, oh yes. I met him, and I wrote his news.
Listen,
which
stop
was-
making
which
everything
was
about
amazing.
you, Leigh-Ann. It's all me this morning from you. Really?
I
Tell
didn't
them, Leigh-Ann,
recognize
don't
one
be
guy,
oppressed.
so I'm trying to make up for it.
I had a friend. We have family friend at Emily. I wrote Leigh-Ann Kruiwagen's news. What is going on with you? Are you a little bit? Are you
Greatness,
insecure this
Leigh-Ann.
morning? What's happening?
I'm with Leigh-Ann.
I didn't
Je suis-
know
je
Adrian
suis Leigh-Ann.
Steed, and so I'm making up for it. That's all.
Didn't Candice Hillebrand make
Yeah.
every teenage boy happy as a continuity person on
Oh,
Mnet?
Well, she was
What a
KTV,
smoke
and then
show.
I went from there.
Oh, here
What
we
a
go.
smoke
That's
show.
the name.
She is
Doreen-
my second cousin.
Oh, shut up. Doreen Morris. You know who Doreen
Oh
Morris was?
yes, good.
Of course.
No, yes, yes. Doreen.
Actually,
Morris.
Sun
Hayden
Reed.
Sue-Ann Braun was the original continuity presenter.
And Broad. Listen, you Mbulelo, you bring up Candice Hillebrand. Oh my God, when I first met her, I thought she was
Smoke
the most
show.
beautiful woman. Yeah,
Wow.
I remember that. I mean, I met her. I thought, ooh, when she was at an event, because I was just starting out in radio, and when she was at an event, I would think that I was obviously in the A grade just by being around her. And I'll never forget her saying to me, and she'd been famous for much longer than me by that stage. And she kind of condescended to speak to me once, and I thought I was in heaven. I could like breathe the same air in the same room that she was in. I mean, at that stage, I would have made love to her shadow if it had passed me slowly enough. But she said to me, she went, I only go to events when people pay me to. And this is before people were doing that. And I thought, you're made of smolderingness. There's just nothing better than this. She got paid when nobody else was paid to be at things. She was paid to be at things. I think that's amazing. Jesus. Wonder what she moved to America or something, and she even released a song, and we haven't heard of her since then. Not that she's disappeared or become a loser, because a lot of people like to leave the media world behind them. And then everybody assumes that they fell off the face of the earth. But
No, Gareth, you must leave it here. Age has no doubt ravaged her like it does us all. just leave it here as that girl that used to get paid to go to events.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Chris T says, "Don't you dare forget about Isabelle Jones." Oh, wow!
No one ever does, Chris. We often speak about Isabelle. I think every time I'm on this damn show, Isabelle Jones comes up. She's dead, right? Chris Frey doesn't even realize she's dead. She died a long time ago.
She's still dead.
I don't know how she died, because that woman put up with nothing.
Let me tell you a quick story about Isabelle Jones, and then we'll get to the headlines, and Ben has to go. But Isabelle Jones was the very Mark woman in most people's minds, right? But before that, she was a very credible consumer journalist. That's why Very Mark hired her, because she had huge reserves of credibility that other people in television and radio didn't have. I mean, when Isabelle said to you that these are absolutely the best mince pies, then she knew what she was talking about. She used to do the mince pie competition in the newspapers. And if Isabelle Jones told you Checkers mince pies were better than Pick and Pay, then fucking Pick and Pay's mince pie sales went under. They were ruined. They were ravaged. Okay. So we got her on my show when I was still in 702, and we got her to partake in a Radio Survivor game. It was her versus Granite the Gladiator, and I think we had Unati, who was at that stage in Kai. She just started on a music TV show. And we had a whole bunch of other people. Isabelle Jones took this thing so seriously. She literally fucked up every single person in that competition. Every challenge, if I made them eat disgusting things, she held her nose and swallowed raw oysters and did whatever was required. And she, in the physical competitions, this little old lady, because she was already kind of old at that stage, she made grown men weep. She took on like bodybuilders and like fucked them up. She was so competitive, hugely competitive. So she ended up winning. She won the whole thing.
If you were stranded on an island, you'd want it to be her
Oh.
with you.
Definitely. She would take on wild animals. She'd bring home the bacon. She'd make a raft out of bamboo and sail to the next island where you'd be safe. I mean, she was a powerful woman, that. So Isabelle
She'd make
Jones.
clothing out of other human skins.
Yeah, she was a hardcore woman. Let me tell you something. When she left, the earth felt the emptiness for a little while after that.
The earth breathed a sigh of relief. It's like, oh, God.
Well, I mean, she comes knocking on your door. You know you've committed some consumer sin, and she's about to unveil it to the world. I mean, people used to shit themselves. She'd go knock on like a factory door where there were these big, Nigerian guys who'd been making, I don't know, biscuits that had too little flour in them, and Isabelle Jones would scare the bejesus out of them. They would run back to Abuja. They'd be so fucking scared of her. She was terrifying. Little lady like this, tiny little woman with white hair. No one messed with her. All right,
For
Ben.
those who
thanks for
believe, you know who loves Isabelle Jones right now, Old Saint Peter, because she's making sure that the pearly gates are the best you can get in town. You know what I mean? Like nothing squeaky. Saint Peter can just do his admin thing, and
Oh yeah, no.
she's
watching. She's probably taken over the responsibility of who gets in and who gets out of heaven. She's
Who are you and what is your name? And let me see if I don't see your name on the list. You can leave.
there we go. All right,
Bye,
cheers,
guys.
Ben.
Have a great weekend.
Well,
Ciao.
we'll
Bye,
see you.
Ben.
There goes Ben. We've got a couple of interesting things to do today. I just want to quickly go through a few headlines, and then we've got a recorded interview. Now, I don't know how much you're into wrestling, but if you are, and millions of South Africans are, it's one of the most popular things on television in this country. I don't understand it, but I got to speak to a dude who they call Angelico. So if you do know what I'm talking about, then comment. We want to hear from you. But if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then just bear with me, because it's quite interesting. He's a South African dude, Adam Bridle, and he's better known as Angelico. And we spoke to him earlier this week, which I recorded and which I'll play out for you just now. So if you're into wrestling, you'll love this. And if you're not, take a listen anyway, because it'll wake you up to a whole world of stuff that most people don't even know about. So hang on for that. And that's coming up. It's going to be really cool. We've also got Mr Sexpo joining us later on. And we've, of course, got George Mienie, because it's a Friday. So stick around for all of that and more. So first of all, Borge. Yeah, Borge is back. First of all, this is a great story. I'm sorry Ben's just left. He's going to miss out on this, but it's his... they were born on exactly the same day, Ben and Britney. And Britney Spears says she is over the moon. She's on cloud nine. In what appears to be a response to a judge has suspended her father as her conservator. The singer posted a video of her having a flying lesson shortly after news that Jamie Spears' role was suspended. Spears' lawyer, Matthew Rosengart, said it was his hope and expectation that the conservatorship would be fully terminated at a hearing on the 12th of November. Through his own lawyer, Jamie Spears called the ruling disappointing. Cher and Dionne Warwick were among those welcoming the judges. Cher and Dionne Warwick were all for.
Yeah.
Now, what
those like grandmothers of pop, man.
Yeah, but what scares the shit out of me is Britney was on a flying lesson.
So what?
Me too.
So what?
So what?
Come on, what patriarchy?
Patriarchy.
No, Britney's a mess of a human.
Still wanting
nothing
to
to do with
have
the-
control. No.
Do you remember? This is not a patriarchy. You know what? You are a representative of a huge swathe of people who love Britney Spears, and you can't separate the fact that you love her or that she has had an amazing career, and she has, from the fact that she is a raving lunatic, Leigh-Ann. She is
well, then sit back and watch the show and enjoy it. Enjoy what's to come.
Hot mess. Well, first of all, I don't that poor man in the plane or woman in the plane with her, because that person is probably dead already. And the damage that this woman is going to do to the world around her is going to be insane. First of all, she is not even allowed to be alone with her own children for good reason. Not because the world is conspiring against poor Britney. Leave Britney alone. Do you remember that guy? But because she is completely stark raving mad. I wouldn't trust her to sit the right way around on a lavatory.
Well, then sit back and enjoy the ride. If that's going to happen, then that's going to happen. But rather she or probably her goes out that way.
You say that, but people like that tend to take out a whole lot of other people with them, and they cause damage. I mean,
Yeah,
she's
and she has
famous
kids.
She had with Kevin Federline. You remember that? Now,
have you seen her current fiance?
Yeah.
Her current fiance is also like 20 something and a dancer, isn't he?
He's like into body fitness and stuff. She's like living her best life at the moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but she has
beautiful.
no idea. She thinks she's a hockey stick. She doesn't know where she is. So Britney Spears, do you remember when
I'm in it for the content?
We were worried. Remember when we were worried about Kevin Federline being, like crazy and dangerous for Britney? Turns out he's the responsible parent. Sweet Jesus. Just put that in your peace pipe and smoke it. Britney Spears. Anyway,
well, you know
what a mess. It's going to be awesome to watch.
Yeah.
Well, Leigh-Ann is in good company.
Some people are just, you can't save some people,
Cher and Dionne Warwick are both on the side of Leigh-Ann Mole here. This is great.
Awesome. I love it. I just love the mess it's going to be. What I don't want to hear is shame Britney in like 2-3 years time when it all falls apart. I can't stand it. Like, you're free now, because my old duck used to say that the worst thing in the world that can happen is getting what you want. So I'm happy for Britney now, because now.
Yeah, but guys, she's not in charge now. She's still got another person who's her conservator. So she's got some guy called John Zabel, who's an accountant, who her legal team chose. So the court has not said there's nothing wrong with Britney. She's fine. They've said
they've suspended it for now.
Insane. They said she's still a chocolate fireplace, but we'll just move it from her dad to this other dude. So nobody
said the problem that her dad was controlling the money. Is that what her problem was?
Yes.
Well, not only her money, he was taking some of it and he was controlling her. She wasn't even allowed to drive a car.
Listen, I'm sorry to say this.
The worst thing about all of this is that if she does something crazy now, then she's going to be shot down by people like you.
No. When she does. When she does. Not if.
Yeah,
when.
Exactly.
When she inevitably has a series of incredibly fortunate / unfortunate events. I have no empathy. This is awesome. You're off the leash now. All the best.
So in other words, you agree that this person should be controlled for the rest of their life?
Yes.
Yes.
They should rather euthanize her.
Put her in a cage and put her on a leash when you let her out of the cage, because she is completely a danger to society and to her own children.
I'm checking out.
The reason she has no control over her own finances is because you cannot trust her as far as you can throw her. She's completely nutty.
But Leigh-Ann, what are you saying? Just let Britney live her life and just move.
Yes. What else are you going to do with a human like this?
Well,
you can't lock them up in chains all their lives.
Yes, you can.
Let them live it out.
You can do that. In fact,
but we do that with other people.
Lunatic asylums all over the world that are chock full of people like this. And the reason that we keep them out of mainstream society is because they hurt other people and they damage property and they do insane things. If you let her have control of her finances for 15 minutes, she'd probably do what Michael Jackson did and go into some furniture shop and spend like 40 million rand in one
Yet he wasn't under curatorship.
He should have been.
Yeah, well, we can't justify one wrong with another. But now, Leigh-Ann,
how many children's buttholes could we have saved if we just put Michael Jackson?
Go on, Mbulelo, quickly. Tell us what you were going to say. I just want to know
is, I'm saying Britney's even more dangerous than other absolutely insane people. Is that millions of people think she's a hero? Yes. So she's actually. I'm not saying in my opinion. She should be controlled more than just your Joe Soap who's crazy around the corner from me, who no one knows.
Put her on a leash. Stop this. And,
I didn't say that.
So her new conservator is this John Zabel guy, and he's going to keep an eye on the finances and make sure that she doesn't kill anybody. So
and he's going to do it for free. He's going to do it for free, I'm sure, because her dad was taking some money.
All those people who've been like, Britney's free. You're not paying attention. You don't know what's in the news because she's not suddenly in control of her life anymore. No one with their head screwed on right would give Britney the controls
we'll see, because it's been suspended now, and in 3 weeks' time, it's going back into the courts to try and have it removed fully. So let's see what the courts do at that stage.
So as in no conservatorship at all, as in the accountant guy can. That's going to be awesome. I'm here for the content, actually. Let me get my head in the right place.
I'm thrilled. As Leigh-Ann says, let's get ready for the ride. It's going to be great. She'll turn the whole of Nevada into a big glass crater. She'll probably activate some kind of atomic weapon by mistake, or she'll do it on purpose. And many people are going to be hurt by this lunatic.
Well, you've also got to take into account that by the very nature of being under conservatorship and lock and key for so long, that there might be a bit of a breakout session. But that's that would happen to anyone.
She is going to go unhinged. She's going to go on a rampage. Just watch. Anyway, it'll be lots of fun, as Leigh-Ann says. So let's watch. That's all the news we've got time for. I want to get into this TNT interview. And I say TNT because that's the channel it's on, and a DSTV channel 137. But take a look at this. This is All Elite Wrestling, and if you care about wrestling, you'll find this very interesting. And if you don't care about wrestling, then I'll tell you what, you're still going to find it interesting. And the reason I say that is because I didn't know there was a South African dude who's quite a big deal in wrestling. So take a look at this and I'll show you what it's all about. Hang on a second. It would help if I actually did this properly. Just hold on. I was about to start it and then I screwed it up. I'm trying to be professional about this. Here we are. There we are. Well, here's something interesting. TNT Africa, which is channel 137 on DSTV, are launching a brand new AEW, which is All Elite Wrestling, Rampage across the African continent. It starts on the 2nd of October, 10 a.m., and you'll probably want to watch this. Now, we've got the world's strongest man, a guy called Mark Henry, who enters the fray as a commentator on AEW Rampage, as well as a scout, coach, and mentor at AEW. The former U.S. Olympic athlete held down a 25-year career in WWE, where he was a two-time world champion. So we're not messing around. Now, joining him on the screen is a Johannesburg-born 33-year-old Angelico, who actually brings an undeniable South African flavor, which we need, in All Elite Wrestling. In recent months, Angelico's star has risen significantly on the AEW rankings since he was featured on AEW Dynamite. He's on the show with me this morning. Hey, dude, how are you?
How's it? How are you today?
Good. I like that South African how's it. That makes me...
I've been away from my home country for a lot of years, but the how's it's never left me.
Now, let's just talk about your first AEW appearance. It was at the inaugural Double or Nothing event as part of the Hybrid 2 with Jack Evans. And since then, you've continued to impress in tag team matches and singles competitions, notably in an intense match against Cody Rhodes on AEW Dynamite. That was back in December 2020. And I won't pretend that I know all of this, but people have told me all of this. So it sounds incredible, man. And I can see that in South Africa, one of the most popular things on TV, without a doubt, is wrestling. It's great that it's happening with a little bit of local flavor. And it's launching, as I said, on Saturday, the 2nd of October on DSTV. That's channel 137. What can people expect to see from you?
Like you said, what I always try and bring to the ring is my unique hybrid style of wrestling, which I've garnered or earned and learned from my travels around the world as a professional wrestler for the last 15 years. And then my undeniably sort of South African spirit, I guess you could call it, always seems to sort of come out when I make my entrances or when I'm sort of posing off or trying to, trying to get under the skin of my opponents. I feel like these kind of quieter dance moves kind of fit in well. You know, they're kind of, in a way, they come across arrogant or cocky. I don't know. To me, they represent home and they represent South Africa. So I just let those things flow out of me when I'm performing.
Sounds terrific. And I've got to qualify this because people will pick up if I'm trying to bullshit people. I'm not the world's most clued up wrestling fan, but what I do know is that you have a reputation for bringing all that liveliness and vigor in when you come into the ring. And I'm interested in how AEW Rampage for fans is different from AEW Dynamite. Can you give us a bit of a differentiation there?
Yeah, I mean, format-wise, it's slightly different. And it's a 1 hour show. It's not 2 hours. But actually, in general, it's much of the same, which is a fantastic thing because 2 hours, I feel, of Dynamite a week is not enough for AEW. We have such a vast roster of enormous enormously talented wrestlers that 2 hours just wasn't enough every week. So we needed that extra hour, and Rampage is going to give that extra hour, that extra 60 minutes a week for all the talent in the locker room, in the back, to really, you know, get another opportunity to be on TV, to show what they're all about, to show what All Elite Wrestling is all about. So Rampage is going to be different to Dynamite, but thankfully also very similar.
Sounds amazing. How did you get into this? How did it all start for you?
I mean, for me, it started when I was a kid growing up in South Africa. My grandmother took me to a WWF show in Sun City when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And it was the first sort of live experience I'd had of any sort, you know. And it just happened to be pro wrestling at the time. And yeah, it just something called to me that night when I was in that audience, when I was watching those guys in that ring. And honestly, the idea and the sensation of wanting to be a professional wrestler, it never left me from that moment onwards. And I can honestly say that from that point to now, I always just dreamed and imagined myself being a professional wrestler, and I just worked as hard as I possibly could at it. And thankfully, that's brought me here to All Elite Wrestling, and now I get to wrestle and represent South Africa to millions of fans all over the world, and I honestly couldn't be more proud.
That sounds amazing. So tell me quickly, you go by Angelico now, but apparently, you know, for people who are in the know, you were Backpacker Joe, then you were Blonde Superman. So what inspires these names? Where do they come from?
They're all a bit different. The ones that you mentioned actually are more sort of nicknames that I was given at certain points. The Backpacker Joe is when I was first touring in Japan. They said that Angelico name was very hard to pronounce for the Japanese public, so they wanted something different, something a bit more comedic, so they came up with the Backpacker Joe. But honestly, I hated it at the time, so it lasted maybe 2 matches, and then I went back to Angelico. The Blonde Superman also, it was always Angelico, and that was like a nickname my friends had given me when I was younger, and that somehow came out in an interview and then somehow stuck to me for a few years. And then Angelico, the first time I was in wrestling school in South Africa, they asked me to write 10 names down on a piece of paper, and that was the one that they picked out. And 15 years later, that's still the name that I use today.
Really? So it's stuck around that long? Because I think it's probably hard to come up with a good name and be pleased enough with it that you stick to it. That's impressive stuff. All right, so tell me what your message is for African fans, and in particular South African fans, people who may have been following you for many of those years.
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, thank you for all the support from back home. You know, I definitely feel it everywhere I go. I mean, I've wrestled in countries all over the world, and there've been fans in the audience, you know, bringing up South African flags. So to really feel that support globally it's quite amazing. And then for the South African fans, just to keep supporting wrestling in general, from All Elite Wrestling, AEW, Dynamite, to Rampage, which is going to debut now on October 2nd on DSTV. To keep watching it, to keep enjoying it, tell your friends about it, tell your family about it. Wrestling's great again. That's the fun thing about it. You know, wrestling had a little dip for a while, but now it's all the way shooting back up. So it's a great time to jump back on board and watch wrestling again, especially if you're a fan when you were younger or back in the day. Now it's the hottest time to be a wrestling fan. It is every week something amazing happens. And also, I'm very proud to be the first South African AEW, but I hope I'm not the last. So that's a message going out to all those young wrestling fans in South Africa. I need to see some more South Africans out here.
What do you think it is about wrestling that gets people so hooked up? Because we know that it's massively popular all over the world, but you know, especially in places like the US and South Africa, we've got massive audiences that tune in to watch these matches. What do you think it is? Is it the excitement of the moment, the stakes, the trash talking, the playfulness of it? What kind of stuff do you think really inspires the fans and gets them thinking?
Everything you just mentioned, I think, you know, is a part of why people are attracted to professional wrestling. And I think above all else, it's that sort of eternal story of good versus evil, you know, and that's always portrayed in the ring, and that's what we look for in our movies, in sort of comic books, in literature, on TV. So wrestling is like that live action. It's like a live action sequence of good versus evil right in front of your very eyes. So you pick your favorite, for whatever your reasons are, and you back him with all your heart and all your might. And that's what makes wrestling such a beautiful thing. You can go with the bad guys if you want to. That's what you're inclined to feel. That's your choice. I don't know about you personally, but
well, for the super fans, I mean, which matches are you most interested in, especially when it comes to who you're going to be up against the most? Who do you like going against? Who do you think brings the most interesting dynamics to the ring?
I think definitely in the tag team division, it would have to be the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. Right now, I think the Lucha Brothers would be more on my radar because they're the new tag team champions. So obviously, if you're in the tag team division, if your goal's not to be the champion, what are you really doing there? So, and those guys are incredible performers. Two brothers from Mexico have been, just clawing their way to the top of the wrestling world, and all my respect to those two. But in the ring, I would love to have a tag team match against those two guys for the belts.
There's anyone that you do not want to be matched with? You think that they might be bad news?
Probably Paul White. I've seen the size of his hands. I don't know if you've seen him. He's like 7'2", and I think that might not be a nice match to have. But I'll take on the challenge. I won't be happy about it, but I'll take on the challenge.
What does it feel like to be in there? I mean, what does it feel like to know that there are millions of people watching, that any mistake is going to be seen by everybody, that anything you do that's really great, and you pull some terrific move, you surprise somebody, you do something out of the ordinary, those kinds of things will be remembered by your fans for a long time. How does it feel? Is there a lot of pressure, or is it quite exciting?
Yeah, it's both. It's pressure and it's exciting. That's I think why most of us do this. The nerves that we feel before we go out for a match. I mean, wow, that's so overwhelming sometimes. You almost your knees are kind of shaking because you can hear the sound of the audience. You can feel them, that they're out there. 20,000 fans last week AEW had. You can feel that energy, and that does make you nervous. But as soon as you step out through the curtain and you're in front of the fans and your music's playing and you're there and you're in character and you're ready to perform, all those nerves go away. Now I'm not Adam Bridal anymore. I'm 100% Angelico. So now I can really start to feel it. Now I can start to flow. I can get into my flow state. I can enjoy that atmosphere. But the few seconds prior to coming out in front of the audience is probably the worst. But once I'm out there, I feel completely comfortable. But it's, again, backstage waiting to go out there is very nerve-wracking.
Do fans, like they would for either soap opera stars or for famous actors, do fans ever kind of expect you to be in character the whole time and expect you to be this crazy wrestling guy, even when you are walking through the shops buying, I don't know, socks?
Yeah, no, I think actually in general, like in this day and age, fans are much more respectful to that. There's always like a blurred line in wrestling, whether you're in character or not, especially when you're using social media. Does he really mean what he's saying here, or is he saying it more out of character? So that blurred line sometimes gets a bit confusing for fans. But in general, I'd say on the streets and out of the wrestling environment, they're very respectful. I've never had any issues.
Well, I mean, it can be quite exciting, I suppose, for them if they think that they've spotted you and then you end up being in character. They kind of, something they didn't expect, and they're probably quite pleased with. I remember I've met a couple of famous people. You want them to be in character secretly. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, because that's what you know them for, right? You know them as the character, not as who they really are.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely. Do you still have family and friends you speak to here in South Africa?
Yes, all my uncles and cousins still live in Cape Town. My gogo, my grandmother, and my grandpa still live in Joburg. So yeah, a lot of family ties still in South Africa.
Fantastic. Are you planning to come out here and visit anytime soon?
Yes, actually, as soon as I can, as soon as travel sort of permits and it's a bit more free-flowing to get between countries, I will 100% try and get to South Africa as soon as possible, mainly just to visit my family, because it's been 2 years now that I haven't been able to come back. And I'm very desperate to see them all. So yeah, I miss them all a lot, very dearly. And as soon as travel permits, I will be back.
So just because so many people are confused about whether or not wrestling is a serious athletic pursuit or whether it's also part performance, and it's probably half and half, you have to be pretty fit to do what you're doing. I mean, you have to keep in pretty good shape, and you're in extraordinary shape. How do you keep that up? Because you you can't just do that in the ring. Yeah, there we go. Show off a little bit. Go for it. There we are. Yeah, he's no slacker. So what do you do to keep fit?
Yeah, so I actually have a lot of different sort of training routines that I interchange as the years go by. Right now, also forced basically to do it through the pandemic as the gyms closed, was sort of body weight training. So I've always sort of been interested in it, and I've always dabbled in it here and there. But over the last years, when I really had to dedicate myself to, okay, like how can I maintain my muscle, grow my muscle, stimulate my muscles with no weights? Now, there's no gyms open now for the next 6 months or longer in some cases. How can I make this work? So just a lot of investigation, a lot of trial and error. And now calisthenics is like, I love it. I love just training with my own body weight and just pushing myself that way. I interchange the calisthenics training now with a lot of skill training. So because I'm not that big for a professional wrestler, it's just my frame just doesn't want to hold that sort of muscle mass. It's not natural for my body. So I'm quite skinny compared to the other guys. So I thought, oh, well, if I'm losing out on strength and power, I need to try and make up for that in other avenues. So agility. So now I'm training a lot more agility. And the more you train it, the more agile you become, funny enough. And then balance as well. Balance is something that most people don't specifically train or work on. But in the ring, the ring's moving the whole time. The guy's moving, the ropes are pushing you, which way and backwards. So balance now has become a huge focus of mine. And then I use other types of stuff to stimulate me. So like skill training in terms of skateboarding at the moment, I've got back into because I found skateboarding uses so much stabilizing muscles in my legs that I can't sort of get to with normal exercises. So that's become a huge part of my training every week now, just skateboarding every week. Basketball again, I've started playing basketball again. I love adding sports into my training routines, just trying to always stay active, trying to always like basketball and skateboarding adds to sort of creativity because no one's telling you how to move. It's not like you can just push the weights, one specific way. It's very loose. So I like that. I like training in a very controlled way and a very uncontrolled way, and then sort of meeting in the middle, which is what I really am as a performer.
And obviously, those kinds of things help you to be nimble too. I mean, you mentioned like in terms of sheer body weight and mass, you're not the biggest guy in the ring necessarily, but being quick is sometimes better than that, right?
Exactly. So if these guys are bigger and they've got more power, that also is going to mean they're a bit slower. They're heavier, that mass is real. So I can use my agility, I can use my speed to my advantage. And obviously if I train more in those aspects, then I become better at those aspects, and then I'll be able to use them better against my opponents. So it's just sort of finding what fits with you as a performer or as an athlete rather, and then just sort of keeping on that avenue, but not being so strict. I like that my avenues sort of twist and wind.
Well, listen, man, it's really good to meet you and to have you on the show. I'm always thrilled to meet people who do stuff that involves a whole community of people, millions of people all over the world, who are just absolutely fanatical. You're making South Africa proud, so we're thrilled to have you on the show this morning. And I can't tell anybody enough that you got to watch what Angelica Adam is up to this coming Saturday, the 2nd of October. It's all happening on TNT, which is DSTV channel 137. And it's on at 10 in the morning. So even if you are hungover the next day, you'll still have time to recover and watch the show. This is terrific.
That is right. Well, no excuses. AEW Rampage, it'll be the best way to spend your Saturday morning. I damn guarantee it.
Thank you so much, man. Good to speak to you.
Thank you, guys.
one place on Cliff Central for 80s movie recommendations, obscure 80s references, 80s crushes, and it's the only place on Cliff Central with the best 80s songs you forgot how much you loved. That 80s Show, Fridays, 9 a.m. on Cliff Central. People say we're stuck in the 80s, like it's a bad thing.
Yo, I put it like wow, this that sound. These oaks don't work hard like me, I hope they know by now.
CliffCentral.com, Gareth Cliff, Mbulelo Tinta, and Leigh-Ann Mole. Look, here we are. Look,
Hola.
Isn't that nice? All right, so it is a Friday. It is the first day of October. It's not a long weekend, but it feels like the proper announcement of spring this weekend. I always think that maybe September's a bit early. I mean, I've got this feeling October's going to be awesome. Nothing to base it on. I have no scientific evidence to back me up on this, I'm afraid. What we do have,
I mean, the fact that we have absolutely solid rain in Gauteng today is a good sign of that. It means it's here.
Yeah, it's a good sign. Listen, you don't have to give me reasons to be excited. Just by the way, in case you were wondering what was happening just now, we did a pre-recorded interview with this guy, Adam Bridle, who's a professional wrestler in the States. I mean, that's a world I know nothing about. I don't watch wrestling, but he seems like such a nice dude. He seems like such a, like a friendly, awesome, happy, positive individual who's doing amazing stuff. So it was good to talk to him. And if you are into that, you could watch it live tomorrow on DSTV's TNT channel and find out more about it.
I like that he's taken on the UK one of the UK's accents, and it's a good one. But he still says South Africa, not South Africa. South Africa.
And instead of saying "how do you do" or "hello," he goes "how's it," which is very South African. Messing around. Listen, we're going to be speaking to a man who I've met once before when he came through to cliffcentral.com years ago, and he's Mr Sexpo. David Ross is his name. He's the guy who conceived, launched, and basically built this brand, this incredible brand around Sexpo, which, in South Africa has been tremendously positive over the last couple of years. It isn't happening like so many things in the expo world are not happening at the moment. But I thought we've got to take the opportunity to speak to him because he's written an autobiography, which is like a tell-all. And I can't wait to hear his stories. He'll be joining us in just a moment or two. And we've also got George Mienie joining us a little later on for our little Auto Central feature, which we do on a Friday. But the weekend is here, and if you've got anything cool and exciting happening, you might want to tell us about that. We would love to hear from you. You can drop us a comment. And Leigh-Ann, just for those people who don't already know this and everybody who hasn't already done it, the like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Please do it quickly.
So welcome back to our channel. Be sure to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. Don't forget to click on the bell so that you get all notifications of all our new updates.
Oh, that's perfect. Well done. That's so great. Well done. Yeah, you have to put your hand over the camera afterwards, right? That's what counts.
And you have to show things like this with your hand behind them so that you get good focus.
Oh, is that what you do? And you have
Yeah.
to do you have to do a white balance with a piece of paper?
Probably.
Yeah. I've been talking to Greg, who reckons that we need to take our VO game up a level. I know Mbulelo's got a whole thing going on with with Cliff Central Sport with the MKT show, where it's filmed in HD. It's got magnificent studio lighting, and if you watched the show yesterday, which I did, there was hilarity with all the guests as well. So you don't want to miss that. That is on Cliff Central Sport. You can subscribe to them on YouTube while you're subscribing to us. All right, so apparently YouTube has blocked all anti-vaccine accounts, all of them. Now, I just want to point out how stupid this is. Not because I want to give any quarter to the anti-vax crowd, but when YouTube does this, it seems to me they have really dodgy standards. I mean, exactly a year ago, when there was all the campaigning around the US presidential election, remember Joe Biden was going up against Donald Trump, and Joe Biden basically didn't appear. He was in his basement. Nobody knew where he was for the longest time. But when he did appear, he was basically an anti-vaxxer, because what he was saying was, I'm not going to take this vaccine if Donald Trump's the president. Kamala Harris said the same thing. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. So by the standards of right now, they were anti-vaxxers. Now, would you have banned the then president of the United States, Donald Trump, who was trying to get these vaccines out there and whose team was largely responsible for making sure that the vaccines were fast-tracked? Would you ban him?
Yeah.
Would you ban Joe Biden? Would you ban Nancy Pelosi? Would you ban those people who didn't trust Donald Trump and said they're not going to be vaccinating if he's president? Just because.
Well, I mean, this is a no-nonsense approach. They are banning huge accounts. There are two massive accounts known globally that'll go. One of them is owned by the Kennedy family.
Yeah, Robert Kennedy Jr. is a bit of an anti-vaxxer. And, this has become like a pejorative term. If you don't trust this vaccine, then suddenly you're an anti-vaxxer. Now, I've said before, I'm pro this thing. I think it's a good idea. I think if it gets us back to normal, I'm all in favor of it. And I don't think it's anybody's business if you or I or anyone else talks about their vaccination status. I don't think it's interesting either. What I don't like is the fact that they're just banning people.
Well, the problem is, are these smaller, more sensationalist accounts. It happened on TikTok. Was the first time I saw one of these videos where a young woman was filming herself trying to walk around a hospital. She was obviously dressed up like a patient with a gown on, and she could barely take 2 steps, and everything was just shaking on her body. It was unvoiced, but she had script up there which indicated that this was caused from the vaccine. And it turned out that was a complete ploy. And they're these smaller accounts that are falsely stating that these vaccines are causing autism, that they're causing cancer.
But so what? So you reckon if we ban these people, that people are just going to stop talking about it? You know what's going to happen is that stories like that are going to seem more true because you can't find them to corroborate the evidence, because they're going to be banned. There's only one opinion that's going to be okayed by YouTube. Then guess what's going to happen? People are going to look for the alternative opinion in darker, deeper places. And the conspiracy theorists are going to thrive. This is what happens when you ban stuff. I wish these idiots in government and in big tech would just stop trying to treat us like children. People are not dumb. If you give them the maximum amount of information and the complete, total gamut, the whole spectrum of opinions, then they'll find out pretty quickly who the smart people are and who the dumb people are. And in between, they'll decide their own position. But if you ban things, guess what happens? It all goes underground. It becomes a whole lot more insidious, a whole lot more dangerous, and that stuff thrives.
Well, they're saying, that the discussion can continue, talk can continue about these possible side effects.
Not on YouTube.
Yes, you can. You can comment on videos and continue the conversation. They won't ban that.
Thanks very much.
they're banning these accounts that just have outright lies about vaccines and that have been proven to be wrong.
And Dr. Fauci at the beginning of the pandemic said, don't wear a mask. Now he's saying, wear a mask. Then he was saying, get the vaccine. After 2 shots, you're fully vaccinated. Now he's saying, get a booster shot. So as the information changes, does he also become an anti-vaxxer?
No.
You see the problem here?
No. When information changes in science, you should change. So it's actually good that he changes.
Yes,
that's
I
the
agree.
correct way to do it.
But again, who's the arbiter here? Because if you trust him rather than the science.
Yeah, but most people don't know how to read science, Gareth. This idea that people can corroborate information. Do me a favor.
You're going to ban people as a safeguard against people spreading false information. That sounds really smart. That's worked so well. That's such a good idea. Like when the Nazis burnt all those books, that really looked great because they could control opinions. Come on. This is 2021. People have phones and people have brains. And if they don't have brains, and
I don't know so much. I don't know so much.
If they don't apply their brains and they don't use their phone properly, that's on them.
I just think it's really harmful to honestly. There are people with phones, and the first thing they're going to see when they pick up a phone is somebody who is claiming to have autism after having the vaccine.
And I don't think there's any evidence that giving people good information, they do the right thing with it. Because I'll use the same example I always use. Why is the world getting more obese when we know that that's bad for you if people did what's in their best interest with good information?
No, I agree with
people aren't good at taking good information.
But don't ban. You can't ban food for fat people. Do you understand? You can't you can't lock their fridges, but you have a government official or YouTube's senior content director go around to fat people's houses and padlock their fridges. You are not allowed to do that, and neither are big tech. And all they're going to do is create alternative platforms that are outside of their control. What I'm saying to you is not that I agree or disagree about the vaccine or about lockdowns or about coronavirus, any of that stuff. That's pretty much established, and I've told you my position on the vaccines. I'm very pro-vaccines. The fact is, when you ban things, and I've always been very consistent about free speech, the moment you ban things, you make it much more sexy and exciting for people to not go along with the mainstream opinion. When you leave it for people to decide, they can decide. There's no controversy.
Would you be interested at all in then, if it were a possibility, that if you do happen to, through your feed, watch a video that's falsely anti-vax, or truly anti-vax, but with false accusations and untruths, that be pinned with a link to a video which
no, because I pay no attention to these warnings and these notices that they attach to people's updates. I know that there are lunatics in the world. Do you remember there used to be a newspaper or a tabloid called the National Enquirer, and there used to be these magazines that were just bullshit magazines. And we've got to get to David Ross, so I don't want to carry on about this too much. He's much more interesting than this story. But there's always been stories about Bigfoot and alien abductions and women who've had 17 cats as children and that kind of thing. There's always been bullshit out there. And I don't mind that bullshit thrives. People love a little bit of bullshit. You try to ban it just because it's bullshit.
Well, it's religion, I suppose.
Yeah, of course. So what are you going to do? You're going to ban that too because it's not according to the fact checkers, who, by the way, these are not people you should be trusting. You're going to ban
and when you ask them where their research is, they'll say, I Googled it.
We got to move on. We've got a much more important and interesting guest here than this stupid subject, which I know is going on. This is a discussion everyone in the whole world is having at the moment. So carry on in your own time. We've got more important stuff to get to. I'm more interested in this anyway, and I'm sure you will be too. So David Ross is referred to as Mr. Sexpo. He's the guy who conceived of, launched, and brought to South Africa the amazing international entertainment exhibition called Sexpo. It's a health, sexuality, and lifestyle expo. It started in Australia in 1996.
It was the winning sperm cell that started this.
Right. And it came to South Africa all the way back in 2007. It's gone to London. After the sale of Sexpo, with no ongoing involvement in the event, And with the exhibition industry in disarray due to COVID-19, David decided he's going to tell his story. He's going to write a tell-all autobiography. And he's with us this morning. How are you, Mr. Ross? Nice to see you.
G'day, Gareth and others. And that's the Australian way of saying, how's it, South Africa?
How are you?
Nice to see you.
G'day.
First of all, I think that there are many South Africans who want to thank you for bringing Sexpo to our shores. We tend to have a reputation as a country of being very conservative and kind of a bit boring, and not particularly au fait with the or comfortable with talking about sex. And I think Sexpo's gone a long way to making South Africa a much more open and much more sexually healthy place. So first of all, thank you on behalf of all of South Africa. But how does it feel, man, after 38 years in the adult entertainment industry? How does it feel to write down all your stories?
Well, I tell you what, it's there's a song called Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen.
Yep.
And it's sort of bringing memories of that to me, because it seems like all I'm doing is sitting around thinking about past glory days. But it's been a ride. I'm still writing, and we're really just we're in the final throes, but we're looking for a publishing deal at the moment. So that's the next challenge.
Well, let's go into the glory days for a minute. Tell us how it all got started before Sexpo, what your story was.
Ooh, okay. And just I would like to add too about the South Africans, and thank you to all the South Africans, because I've always been made to feel very welcome over there. Love the place, and I'm double vax, so as soon as we can travel again, I'll be over there to talk a bit more about the book.
Sure.
Hopefully, when we've got a publishing deal and we're ready to actually get it out to the public. So the starting point was, I used to be a motor mechanic many years ago. And that was, I thought I had a dream job, because I was working on cars, and I've always been a car person, remain that to this day. And I had a car accident on Christmas Day in 1980, which has almost killed me, in fact. And I spent 3 months in hospital for the first time, and then many hospital trips after that. And I got an insurance payout. Now, I put some of that insurance payout to work, and bought into what was an illegal brothel at the time.
Oh, wow.
But I'd done my research, and there was a moratorium in place that dictated that brothels were to become legal should they get a planning permit. And the planning permit stipulated they had to be within certain distance from residential areas and various other criteria. And so I did my research and came to the conclusion that the brothel was going to get a permit. So I invested a substantial amount of money in purchasing the building, or part of the building, I should say. I had a share, I didn't buy that share outright. Right. And so sure enough, after a lot of legwork, and I went and introduced myself to the neighbours and put on a suit, and we got the permit. So that was great. Very tedious work. Not a lot for a man to do in that industry. So I was actually doing the cleaning at the place for quite some time, because I felt I needed to have some input. So a couple of years later, I sold out of that, and I'd met numerous people in the adult industry by that stage, and because it's a very, very incestuous business. Well, I mean, and this is why I call my working title of the book is Life Inside the Adult Industry Bubble. And because everyone is in the adult industry. You have lunch with people from the adult industry, you have dinner with people from the adult industry, you socialise with people from the adult industry. And this is why I say life can be a bit boring, or not necessarily boring, but a bit of a shock when one leaves the industry.
Well, it's true also that you guys have different hours to everyone else. I mean, the adult entertainment industry is mostly a nocturnal business, and the rest of us are doing 9 to 5s, and then our fun starts at night. For you guys, that was work time.
Well, I mean, since 1995-6, when I started running Sexpo, it did become a day an office job. But of course, then we had the 4 days of putting the show on at various towns, cities, and then internationally. So it became a 9 to 5 plus job after that. So not too different, but still the people that in your office are all in the adult industry. And look, I mean, I do feel you mentioned too about South Africa, and I think Australia for sure, being more open to discussion about sex these days. And I do feel a great deal of pride in that. However, one thing that hasn't definitely changed is that people that work in the industry suffer enormous discrimination at the hands of banks and financial institutions and landlords and all the things one needs to run a business, or in fact just to live. Because you mentioned you work in the adult industry, and it is it's like no. So that hasn't changed, and I am doing a bit of work on that, but that's probably a story for another time.
Well, when Mbulelo and Leigh-Ann started in the sex industry, they also had these problems, and they obviously couldn't buy property. I mean, listen, it's difficult. It's difficult, but there are also advantages to it. I mean, you get to meet pretty amazing people. You get to do really interesting things. Certainly the experiences that many people have, whether they're actually actively involved in the sex industry or whether or not they just run it from a business point of view, which is kind of what you were doing. I mean, it must be quite exciting because people are animals, and when you see them engaging in the stuff that animals do and that animals aren't embarrassed about, but humans are, you kind of have to laugh when you step back and look at it. And I'm sure for you, there must be loads of stuff that you think is really funny. I mean, give us some ideas, because you're obviously going through the book writing process, and doing that means you unpack a whole lot of your own memories. There must have been some hilarious stories of things that happened either at Sexpo or with Sexpo, or even during the time when you were running this illegal brothel, when you were doing other stuff in the entertainment industry that is hilarious and kind of ridiculous now. When you think about it, makes you smile at very least.
Well, there's certainly been some ridiculous moments, but also some fairly dangerous moments. I mean, when we were running the illegal brothel, when it became legal, we were firebombed by a competitor. At Brisbane Sexpo in 2001, we had a bomb threat where we were. It was one time suggested that we evacuate the show, and so we had a meeting with all the security and the bomb people and the venue, and it was decided not to evacuate. And so when the designated time came around, the bomb was supposed to go off. I decided that I needed to stay in the show because we'd also decided in this board meeting that we weren't going to tell any of the staff or any of the public or anything, just carry on regardless and happy days. So I thought, well, I really should stay in the building, because if a bomb does go off and I'm over the road having lunch with a glass of champagne in my hand or something, it probably wouldn't look too good.
So
when the appointed time came around, it was like, whew, okay.
This is an interesting story because we don't think of the adult entertainment industry as being a competitive space when we are just consumers. You know, for example, if we come along to Sexpo, we don't think, oh, well, there are other people who don't like David and his Sexpo, and they've got their own thing that they're doing, and they want to firebomb him. I mean, it can get quite hairy because you deal with some underworld people, right?
Oh, look, in the early days, well, even more recently, but yes, in the early days, well, I mean, we were, and I have to jump on board that, we were criminals by definition because we were running an illegal business,
right.
as everyone else was. So water finds its own level, if you like. And yes, there were some interesting meetings in the early days, but even, at a Melbourne event in Australia, 2000, in the late, mid 2000s maybe, an outlaw motorcycle gang president came up to me, who I knew, it was a colleague. He ran a strip joint, and he came up to me at the bar at the close of show drinks, and took me aside and said, "Look, this bloke, one of your exhibitors, owes me money, and I need to get it. And if you don't get it, then he's going to end up in the Yarra with the Yarra River without his legs."
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
I had to go and take this colleague, this friend who was an exhibitor and remains a close friend, and I had to take him aside and say, "Look, name redacted, says that you owe him money, and he really, really wants it, and he really, really wants it tonight." And so I mentioned to him the possible ramifications of not paying this outlaw motorcycle gang president, and I left it at that because I thought, well, look, I really don't want to get involved in this. I've got a show to run. And the next day I saw my friend, at the show, and he was working his stand. And I thought, oh, no, sorry, I didn't see him the next day, and I was a bit concerned. And then later in the day I saw him, and I said, how'd that all work out? And he goes, mate, we've just been fishing. Huh? I said, what, with name redacted outlaw motorcycle gang president? He goes, yeah. And I said, he told you were going to end up in the Yarra without your legs, and you've gone out fishing on a boat with him. Clearly, the money was paid, and it all ended up well. But so yes, the industry does tend to attract a colourful type of
array.
person.
Yeah.
But look, there's mums and dads involved too that are just there purely for the money. And I remember, years ago, a group of grandmothers then. So God bless them, they've probably passed away by now. But this is in the early days, and they started a company called Bumfloss, which was selling lingerie and G-strings and so forth. And they used to hand stitch these. And they'd put up a show, and they were in their 70s then, and they'd put their stand up, and they'd be selling their Bumfloss stuff, and then they'd go away to their grandkids and their, whatever they did afterwards, and that was it.
I wonder how many brands have launched on the back of Sexpo, especially, like you talk about lingerie brands, underwear brands, whether it's kind of strip shows, famous porn stars have been helped by this in their careers. I mean, to me, you're like the grandfather of a lot of this stuff globally now in some way that you didn't know it was going to be this big when you started it. I'm curious about those people who resisted. I mean, we know here in South Africa, the religious lobby didn't particularly love Sexpo. There were those concerned parents groups who always come out of the woodwork and say, oh, well, even though we're not going, even though we won't allow our kids to go, you shouldn't be allowed to do this for the people who do want to go because we're in charge of morality in this country. There must have been a lot of resistance in the beginning.
Look, absolutely. The story that sticks to my mind, and it's really where the business was made, was in 1995, where I conceived the idea and then went about putting the show together. And obviously with the show, I mean, the first idea was to have a 2-day touch and feel expo where people could invite the public in to come and touch.
Touch and feel.
That was the working title.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I went about finding a venue, and that proved considerably more difficult than I had ever imagined. I mean, I'd suffered discrimination because I'd been in the industry, but I thought, this is a respectable business. We're starting here. It'll be fine. Well, I couldn't get a venue for the love of it. So we ended up in a very small hotel, conference area, with about 30 stands. And so it was a raging success from what we thought. We had 5,000 odd people turn up over 4 days, which, we really don't know exactly, but it's somewhere around there. And then, so the Monday morning, I sat down with the manager of the hotel and said, now about next year. And he said, oh, no, I'm afraid there'll be no next year. We've got a lot of religious groups that use our hotel for their conference and so forth. And we've had numerous phone calls that we won't be getting their business if we allow you back again. So that was the end of that deal. I then went on to the Melbourne Exhibition Centre because we knew that we could attract a crowd, and I got knocked back from the Melbourne Exhibition Centre. Well, no, sorry. In the first case, I got the okay from the Melbourne Exhibition Centre, and then when I told them the name of the event, all of a sudden the dates became unavailable.
Oh, right.
And the reason was given that we had an accountant's seminar on at the same time.
Oh, boy.
So I promptly put out a media release saying clearly accountants really don't have sex and they're not much fun. And so started the lobbying process. And so I lobbied the MEC for a good 6 months. And it culminated with me turning up outside a boardroom meeting that they were having, unannounced, with a dozen packs that I'd made up of a video, and it was video back in those days, that we'd edited of the footage that were taken at the first show, the small one, and with a glossy brochure and all the right words and so forth, and presented that. So we ended up getting the go-ahead. And when we had our first show at the Melbourne Exhibition Centre, we did 38,900 odd people in 4 days. We had a queue the length of the Melbourne Exhibition Centre, which is 2 kilometres. Anyway, so the general manager came up to me of the Melbourne Exhibition Centre, and he said, "David, I'm so glad that we ended up, almost taking credit for having taken the booking." And he said, "You really won me when I saw my neighbour in the queue." So that brings it down to a personal level where that's really the point that people, and this goes to the discrimination I was talking about before, where people say, "Look, we love to use your services and we love to attend, but don't think about being our next door neighbour or borrowing money from us or leasing property from us." It's ongoing.
People just love judging other people, but the irony of all that judgment is that, I mean, I used to go to Sexpo because, I obviously was, we were a media partner. And we went with Leigh-Ann once or twice and I took the whole team there and we used to walk around and we'd see so many people that we knew. And once you see other people there who you're like, well, actually, there's nothing to be ashamed about here.
Exactly.
And it takes a kind of mental shift. Because, you've got people scantily clad walking around or they're selling sex toys or where else can you do that kind of thing in society and not have people look at you askance? Because when everybody's at Sexpo, there's no room for you to be judgy. You got to get on with it.
Well, we used to like to say that we encouraged an environment where people could leave their inhibitions at the door. And I think a lot of that was to do with creating the environment, the right space. Non-threatening. I mean, making people laugh was another thing. I several times hung several hundred blow-up dolls and sheep and various things from the roof. Now, I'll tell you a quick story. I don't know how much time we've got, but when I came up with this idea, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to hang all these sheep from the thing. Blow-up dolls, and they'd make joke ones blow up sheep.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I better be, so I've got black ones, white ones, sheep, this thing. And so I thought, well, okay, we can fill them full of helium and let them go. Well, I got a bottle of helium and I got a blow-up doll in my office. Now, we work in an office, which was, we've got accounts payable department, accounts receivable, IT department. It's an office. People come in, bankers come in for meetings. And so I blew up this doll in my office to see if it would float. And if so, how long would it say blown up for? Now, I can tell you that the helium that goes inside a blow-up doll is not sufficient to make it float. Right? The plastic's too heavy. Okay. So then I thought, okay, well, there goes that idea. We're gonna have to string them from the roof. But I did leave this blow-up doll in my office visitor's chair for several days. Because I needed to know how long it would stay blown up for.
Yeah.
And so the people that came into my office for a meeting, and some from outside of our office, but anyone came, what are you doing with a blow up?
It's like when you say to them when they leave, please close the door behind you.
So we end up hanging these with fishing line from the roof, which took us a full 24 hours. On the night before the show, and I was there physically doing it with some people myself, and because it was a great idea until we realised how long it was actually going to take. But some of the dolls were looking a bit deflated by that. We had to blow them up with compressed air, so some were looking a bit deflated by the end of the show. But the point being that we tried to make an environment where people felt comfortable coming into. Leave their inhibitions at the door, and if you could make them laugh and make them laugh early, that would be a good thing. So people walked in, and it was so funny to sit there where all the people would flock in and see people walking, and they look around, and you can see they're a bit nervous for a start, and then they look up and see dolls hanging from the roof, and then that's it. Yeah, you've got them.
Well, I mean, I remember that the funniest thing of all is you'd kind of see these very ordinary middle-class couples who you think probably don't even have a sex life, and they're walking into the sex toy shop and they're buying bags and bags and bags of stuff. And you think, Jesus, those people are kinky when they walk past you,
Everyone does it.
Right. You don't know this stuff until you see it with your own eyes. So I've got Mbulelo on the screen here, and he's got the painting that Picasso did of me, which we were talking about a little bit earlier on. You kind of launched him. I mean, how else does a guy like that get in a pre-internet age? How does he get famous? And you helped him become a household name worldwide.
That was an interesting story. I write that he sent a tape in, but I think he actually rang originally, and I said to him, I spoke to him personally, and I said, send a tape in and we'll see how we go. And I didn't really think, I mean, if someone rings you up cold and says, look, I paint with my penis, and I think I'd be a really good talent for you. It's like, yeah, send us a tape and we'll see how we go. And not really expecting very much of that. So he sent this tape in, and I remember my PA sitting in the adjoining office, my outside office, and I said, I was watching it on the screen, and I didn't even bother picking up the phone, the intercom. I just yelled out, "Get this bloke!" And now you're right. He travels all over the world. He was in hospital the other day. I saw on Facebook he had a bad reaction to some Novocaine not in his social life. That was some at the dentist. He had some bad reaction to some Novocaine, so he spent a few days in hospital with a head like a elephant man. But I think he's all better now. So as long as it didn't swell his paintbrush, we're probably right.
So I'm curious about with your experience of so many countries and Sexpo going all over the world, and how would you describe the attitude to sex? Because you're in a unique position. You've heard all the complaints, you've heard all the compliments, you've seen where it's been tremendously successful and where it's maybe been less successful. How would you rank Australians, South Africans, the British, and perhaps even other people all over the world when it comes to their attitudes to sex?
Look, I think, and I'm not saying this just because I'm on South African, I know this is going around the world thanks to the internet, but look, I've had this I've had the discussion with journalists in South Africa asking, well, we're really conservative people over here. And I think nothing could be further from the truth. What I say is that the media may try and tell a population that they're conservative, but that doesn't make it so. The fact of the matter is that South Africans are probably the most open to the subject matter that I've come into contact with, and I say that in all seriousness. I mean, Australia's really good. Australia's really good. UK, they're a bit standoffish. I mean, we all know the joke about the politicians in the stockings and high heels, the male ones, that is. They might be a bit kinky, but they don't like coming out in public, I don't think.
No.
But of course, the 2015 show in the UK was a disaster for another thing. I was there for that show, and the Paris bombings happened on the Wednesday or something before the show.
Yeah.
And that closed London down. The subway was closed, the underground. There were sniffer dogs on the street. We had sniffer dogs on the floor, drug sniffer dogs. Bomb sniffer dogs, I should say. No one turned up, but it was a disaster that the local organizer couldn't recover from.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because I mean, if terrorists are going to strike, Sexpo, ironically, would probably be high up on their list because some of them are religious extremists. So you probably had to be careful.
Well, when I mentioned the 2001, I think it was bomb threat in Brisbane, and this is I can tell you, this is the first time that I've aired this publicly. This bomb threat, and it will come as a bit of a shock to some of the staff that were there. But as I said before, I did stay in the venue. Yes, we were led to believe that it was a religious fundamentalist group that was behind that. Well, I don't know if they're religiously fundamental as we like to refer to them now, but fundamental by definition, I would say, because if they thought that having a sex show was something that they couldn't deal with, well, I'd say they're pretty fundamental. But back to your point or your question, look, South Africa is really, the numbers were fantastic in South Africa. Look, hopefully when the pandemic is under control and international travel is allowed again, I really want to get over there. If it's not for a revival of some show similar to Sexpo, then certainly my public speaking.
I'll tell you what, David, we need something similar to Sexpo again, because I think people have become quite boring since you left and since Sexpo moved on. And I think it's time to revive these things. There's a huge market for it. And South Africans, as you say, I'm willing to believe you. It's kind of surprising to me. South Africans have a good attitude to sex. I think we can do with some improvements as well. So I got a question here, or rather a comment. This is from Tracy. She says, Leigh-Ann, please introduce David with your sex voice. Leigh-Ann used to do those. You remember those call things where, if you call this number now, we'll turn
I got a story for you on that.
Right. Leigh-Ann, do it quickly for him, and then he can tell us the story.
So it would be something like, Sexpo, this weekend, come and play with us. And there goes the blush.
That's very good. And I can tell you, I've heard plenty of phone sex line operators over the years. Not in a personal capacity, mind you.
Yeah.
But when I first, as I mentioned earlier, I was doing public relations and marketing for the adult industry after I sold out of the brothel. And then I got a call I ended up doing a 12-month gig with Club X, which is a national chain of adult bookstores in Australia, or retail adult stores. And so they showed me my new office when I got there, and straight across the hall was the phone sex operator room. Now, I kid you not, I'd be on the phone trying to make you to a journalist trying to sell a story on how clean and wholesome we were.
Yeah.
And there'd be a girl out there. I've just got to shut my door. So.
God.
We were in a fairly cramped office back in those days.
All right, so there are lots of things that I think people still want to know, but you are going to put the book out, and we hopefully will see you come and visit soon as travel opens up. I do think that Sexpo's made a tremendous contribution to South Africa, and for that reason, I'm not being sarcastic at all when I say that we've benefited from your child, your brainchild in Sexpo. But it isn't always. And I don't want you to give out too much here, because we've kind of got to wrap up anyway. But people always imagine that behind the scenes and backstage and in the preparation for a show like that, that's where the really, really crazy stuff happens. But it's probably quite businesslike, right?
Well, look, we enjoyed ourselves.
Okay, all right.
However, look, we had production managers backstage. We had lighting managers. We had stage managers. And they all had to get forms signed by people when they're coming in before they went on stage. So it was business-like in that regard, but not every minute of the day.
And it wasn't boring either. But I'm just saying that a lot of people think.
Moment.
Yeah, of course. There we go. And that's probably a good title for the book if you haven't got one already. Never a dull moment.
Now, can I just add? And I know you've got to wrap up, but just in regard to the book launch and so forth, the public speaking angle of this is hilarious. I've been doing a bit in Australia, and I really hope to, when I come to South Africa, to do some corporate speaking, because the story goes to the resilience and the dedication and the drive needed to make this happen, given all of the hiccups or the roadblocks that we were placed in front of us early on. And so not only is it a story of how to public relations, marketing and messaging and packaging is so important, but it's delivered in such a humorous way that it's a presentation that no one will forget. So MrSexpo.com with a hyphen in the middle of it, they can go there and if anyone wants a copy of the book, MrSexpo.com.
MrSexpo.com. Well, we're talking to Mr.
It's got a hyphen in it, so it's Mr-Sexpo.com.
So I'm thrilled to speak to you again, David, and let us know when you're out here, and we'll definitely get together and you can tell us more of your great stories. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for the interesting questions.
No, it's great to see you. There's David Ross, Mr. Sexpo on cliffcentral.com this morning. And as usual on a Friday, that's our favorite time of the week, and it's our favorite point in the week. We get to do all the fun stuff, and this morning George Mienie will join us in just a second or two. It's been a busy start to the day. I hope you've got a good start to your October. Leigh-Ann, you got quite flustered there with Mr. Sexpo, huh? How did you? Oh, yes. Come and enjoy yourself with us. How did you say it?
Sexpo this weekend. Come and play with us.
That's awesome.
I just want to know what all those sex phone people look like, because that's always the funny part.
I don't think you do, actually, because that will totally spoil the fun.
Yeah, it's like I've never wanted to know what the Cell C voice lady was like. I was always like,
yeah.
In my mind, she's just Candice Hilbrand, or whatever. Like that.
Oh, still on that? You still on that, huh, Mbulelo?
Yeah, Candice Hilbrand. Yeah, she's
you like
huge part of my teenage years.
Too. All right. That's quite enough from you. Otherwise, you'll be writing a Sexpo book soon. All right, everybody. It is time for us to get to George Mienie. Just quickly before we get to George, we always recommend a podcast of the week, and this week it is Life with Lebang. She managed to catch up with hip-hop heavyweight AKA and newcomer Costa Titch. They've unpacked the state of music in South Africa. They talked about wrestling as well. They talked about the power of good lyrics and their new album, You're Welcome. Plus, there's even a cool video of it too, which you can watch on our website or on the Cliff Central YouTube channel, which you need to get to ASAP. That's Life with Lebang. You can catch the show every Thursday live on cliffcentral.com at 11 a.m., or you can get the podcasts wherever you listen. So just in case you needed a recommendation for some extra entertainment over the weekend, Life with Lebang. Hey, George Mienie, how the hell are you?
I'm hell of a fun. Thank you, Gareth.
That's good. That's good stuff, George. We need you to be hella fine. Otherwise, we're not going to start our weekend right. Okay, So George, what's going on? What's news?
Hello, it's Leigh-Ann.
George.
God, you too.
Just before I get into what's is that a caricature behind Mbulelo?
No, that is the painting that Picasso painted of me with his penis.
Oh wow.
That's Sexpo. It's one of my greatest treasures. That's why I keep it in the storeroom at Cliff Central.
Okay. Wow. In the storeroom. So
George, you don't seem to take me seriously when I say that it's my greatest treasure. I don't think you believe me, George.
I do believe you. Absolutely do believe you.
Those blue marks on that painting that make up the background. You see that? Those are his arse cheeks. Those blue marks. Those are his
watched him do this.
Yeah, Leigh-Ann actually watched. She got a close-up view of him doing this. He did it in studio and presented with a bow afterwards. He presented it like when a royal portrait is made, and then they move the little curtain aside, and the Queen goes, "Yeah, very nice." That's kind of how I felt. They presented this portrait to me.
Right. Very, very nice. Nonetheless, moving on from Picasso to taxi companies.
You asked, George. I was going to create a nice gap between you and Mr. Sexpo so it wasn't awkward and uncomfortable, but you brought up the painting, so now,
I did, because it's there on the screen next to Mbulelo.
I'm a professional. I was creating the right aesthetic. We're on YouTube now.
That's right. Damn straight. All right.
Anyway, a taxi company in Bangkok, Thailand, almost went out of business during lockdown, and this move that they made, you might think that it's for profit, but it wasn't. So what they did was they had a fleet of taxis. They owed money on these taxis, and the taxi company was struggling to make ends meet, pay its employees. So it took the fleet of taxis and created gardens on top of the roofs of the taxis. Now you can imagine in a parking lot, a bunch of taxis standing side by side and all gridlocked, and they turned the roofs of these taxis into gardens to grow vegetables, chili peppers, and then they put tires on the top of these taxi roofs, filled them with water so that frogs could start to grow.
This is amazing. Is this called the Greta Thunberg taxi rank now? Because I believe is that true? That's what I heard.
I don't know what the name of the the new name of the taxi rank is, but Greta Thunberg. I'll check it out, Gareth. But they did this in order to feed their employees. They said they were going to try and sell the leftovers, but they did it to feed their employees and to keep everybody afloat. And then hope. Well, they grew frogs, which I think in Thailand they actually eat frogs.
So it was a frog farming, plant growing taxi rank. I mean, I could see South Africa without taxi ranks. We could create a whole biosphere in this country if we could do something like this. But if we could do something like this, those are the key words. And I somehow don't see the taxi bosses in South Africa being particularly environmentally attuned. Or do you think I'm being sarcastic and cynical, Leigh-Ann, Mbulelo? What do you think? You think there's a chance that the taxi bosses
I'm just imagining our already tall taxis with tall millie stalks and getting crushed underneath bridges.
I don't see it working.
All right. I don't know if it work in South Africa. I don't. The taxis have operated here non-stop. Remember in Thailand and that area, the taxis are very reliant on tourism, whereas in South Africa it's commuting. So I don't think in South Africa our taxis would ever stop.
Well, I mentioned Greta Thunberg because I do want to show you the cover of Scandinavian Vogue, where she features on the cover with a horse in a forest, and it says at the bottom, "The wonders of Greta Thunberg," which I think is just so marvelous. Isn't that lovely? That's hero worship.
A lot of paper used to make those magazines.
Yeah, but Leigh-Ann, don't spoil everybody's fantasy.
The wonders of a 15-year-old.
They must stop trotting out this poor girl and using her as a prop for their causes.
She was out and about just yesterday at some conference, and the UK Prime Minister was there, and she was saying to him how they've ruined children's lives.
Yeah, never before have we seen a child's life ruined quite as much as we've seen it happen with Greta Thunberg. You've never seen such a miserable, unhappy human being who should be enjoying her childhood. And all she is complaining about the environment the whole time and moaning about how we're ruining it. What a sad...
She has a purpose.
Her parents should be arrested for child abuse. But that's
come on.
Yes, I'm telling you. Back to you, George. Let's go on to the important stuff.
Well, talking about strange people from Florida... a man tried to trade a car into a dealership, sat down, wanted to buy a new car, had his current car, and the dealership put the VIN number into their system. And it turned out that man stole that car from that very dealership the week before.
Oh, wow. George, I meant to ask you because I've heard stories about this. Sometimes people sell cars that they don't actually own. So I'm sure that you guys have security protocols in place with Auto Trader, but there are dodgy people, like in any business, who probably try to sell cars that they actually don't own, that are either stolen or that haven't transferred properly from one person to another, that, the right forms haven't been filled in. There must be a bit of that goes on, especially in a country like this, right?
There's a lot of, I wouldn't say the majority, but there's a lot of unscrupulous dealings going on where, you have to be careful. But the majority of dealers, the ones on Auto Trader anyway, do check out where the car comes from, and they have mechanisms and processes where when they buy the car, they check that the car isn't stolen. Because you can imagine, even if you bought a car and you paid money for it and it's a stolen car, the police will come and fetch it and they couldn't care what you paid for it. They'll impound it.
Exactly, and then you lose all your money that you've paid over to the other person.
Exactly. So you got to be careful. But a reputable dealer would have checked the car out before they bought it, which means that it's okay to buy it from them. I think you'll get a gut instinct. What I always advise or encourage people to do is if you're going to buy a car from a dealership, go and look at what their reputation looks like online. because
Right.
that's going to give you an indication of whether this is a reputable dealer or not. And if they've built a good reputation on social media and they're engaging with their customers, chances are they're not going to be dodgy. Whereas if they're non-existent online, I mean, how can somebody be non-existent online in the 21st century or 22nd century? I think it's just if there's a void there, there's question marks in my mind.
And George, is there like an SABS type of bureau where we can go and check out accredited people like yourself, or is it just at the moment we just got to do our own research? You know what I mean? Where I can go and see that, like Auto Trader are an accredited place. Is there a list where I can look at 50 accredited people or not?
Yes, so there are industry bodies in the automotive industry in South Africa, and there's a few of them. Franchise dealers belong to the National Automobile Dealers Association, and so do independent dealers, as well as NAAMSA, the National Association for Automobile Manufacturers of South Africa. So there are industry bodies that you can go and see whether the dealer is a member of those. But being a member of those, you can imagine you can be a member and then become dodgy or do something dodgy, and that organizations never know that you've become dodgy. So you've got to do your own research as well.
Listen, I can't believe it's taken us how many episodes of having you on the show before we eventually got to the point where we brought this up, because it's quite a big deal. And you've just shared quite a lot of really useful information with people that they may not have considered before.
Well, exactly. It's you buying a car. It's a big outlay, and if you buy a stolen car, you're going to lose the money because the police are just going to take it from you.
Damn right.
They're not
All right.
going
What else have you got for us?
Finally, Gareth, and this is happening in South Africa, maybe not to the degree that it's happening in the UK, but Auto Trader UK has reported that inquiries for electric cars have gone up to 1.8 times. Every 1.8 minutes, there's a search for an electric car over the last weekend, and it's up 36% from the weekend before, and that is as a result of the fuel shortage in the UK.
Oh, yes. That fuel shortage is such a big deal. Apparently, Boris Johnson was on the phone to the Queen, and she answered and said, "Yes, I drove a truck during the war. Why do you ask?" Because they've got such shortages that they're looking for lorry drivers to help deliver fuel to the various fuel stations. So it's a real problem, huh?
It's a real problem, and as a result, consumers have responded. And we saw this at lockdown in South Africa at the beginning of last year, where consumer behavior and shopping behavior changes almost instantaneously. That's why if you run a business and you don't have your fingers on data, with the ability to see what your customers are doing, you can't make changes 3 months down the line. Literally, these things happen overnight, and we saw it at the beginning of lockdown last year. And literally one weekend to the next, when this fuel shortage started to happen, what did consumer search do? Switch to electric cars.
Amazing. That's the kind of catalyst that you need to make people change their behavior. You're not going to do it with propaganda and persuasion.
Exactly. Data.
Well, George, as always, fascinating to have you on, and thank you for being on the show today. And Mbulelo, Leigh-Ann, we will see you on Monday. Otherwise, everybody have a good weekend. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure that you listen to our podcast of the week, Life with Lebang, and we will catch you Monday morning, 6 a.m. bright and early. Have a happy weekend, baby. Check you later. Be good.